Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the most astonishing and honestly complex corporate investigations we've seen in recent history. We're going to map out the timeline, the digital evidence, and the really severe allegations of what police are describing as a massive criminal syndicate operating right inside a well-known multinational corporation. Now, just to be clear up front, we are going to look strictly at the facts derived from police reports, those formal complaints known as FIRs, and official statements, to understand exactly what allegedly unfolded at the TCS BPO in Nashik between 2022 and 2026.
So, think about it. How does a standard, highly sought-after corporate job turn into a full-blown national security investigation? Usually, when we picture a top-tier multinational BPO, we think of safety, right? We think of career progression, professionalism. But today, we're going to explore how, according to the authorities, that illusion of safety was allegedly weaponized by a dark, hidden network operating right there within the office walls.
Section 1. The initial recruitment. Every complex network has a starting point, and this one kicks off with what really looked like a lucky break for a young student. The timeline actually starts out completely normally. Back in January 2022, a 23-year-old student bumps into an old acquaintance, a guy named Danish Sheikh. He basically plays the role of a helpful mentor and helps her secure a job at the TCS Nashik BPO by mid-2022. She's hired alongside a big batch of about 147 young recruits, mostly between 18 and 25 years old, so it's a dream come true for a fresher. But then, take a look at the sharp turn in July 2022. According to formal police reports, Danish called her out to a secluded hill known as Khandoba Tekri, and it was there that the healthful mentor facade allegedly dropped, and he attempted to force himself on her physically. When she resisted, the reports say he completely flipped his strategy, using a classic psychological tactic. He promised her love and marriage.
Section 2. Escalation and abuse. Because that traumatic event up on the hill, that was really just the beginning of what authorities are calling systematic abuse.
Here's the crucial thing. Danish allegedly wasn't acting alone. The FIRs outline this whole coordinated group operating right inside the corporate hierarchy. So you have Danish handling the emotional and physical exploitation. But then a team leader named Tausif Akhtar enters the picture. The reports allege Tausif began viciously blackmailing the victim right in the office pantry, literally threatening to expose her relationship with Danish to her family if she didn't submit to his own demands. You also have Razam Miman allegedly orchestrating severe workplace harassment, and Nida Khan, a process associate, who played a highly specific psychological role that we'll get into in just a second.
Now, there is a deeply disturbing layer to all of these allegations. According strictly to the police FIRs, this group systematically shifted casual workplace conversations toward religion. They allegedly mocked Hindu deities like Lord Shiva and Lord Krishna, using highly derogatory language. The authorities state this wasn't just typical workplace bullying, it was a deliberate, targeted psychological assault. It was designed to break the victim's faith, isolate them, and basically make them more vulnerable to the syndicate's control.
So for nearly 4 years, the primary victim was allegedly strung along by Danish's promises of marriage. But cut to February 2026, and that whole illusion completely shatters. The victim receives a message from a woman named Meheran. In the reality, Meheran was Danish's actual wife, and they already had 2 children together. When he was confronted, Danish callously admitted he never had any intention of marrying the victim. The years-long psychological trap was finally out in the open.
Section 3. The undercover operation. Because while the victim's world was collapsing internally, the outside world was finally starting to catch on.
In February 2026, a local political worker tipped off the Nashik police about forced religious conversions happening inside the BPO. Now, obviously, police couldn't just raid a massive global corporate campus without hard proof, so they executed this highly coordinated 4-step plan. They handpicked 6 highly trained female constables, planted them in disguise as housekeeping staff, and for 40 tense days, these undercover officers literally mopped floors while secretly observing the harassment, the inappropriate touching, and the alleged brainwashing. Finally, armed with all that raw intelligence, they approached the terrified victims off-site to promise them police protection.
Section 4. Arrests and FIRs. That off-site assurance from the police was the catalyst. It gave the victims the one thing the alleged syndicate had stripped away from them, a voice.
On March 26, 2026, the 23-year-old primary victim found the immense courage to file the very first FIR. And once that dam broke, man, the floodgates just opened. Within just 9 days, between March 26th and April 3rd, a total of 9 FIRs were filed across local police stations by 8 more employees. The undercover operation had worked, the culture of silence was officially broken. Now, what's really important to understand here is that this wasn't purely a gender-based exploitation ring. The FIRs actually outlined the very disturbing case of a male employee who was also targeted. Tulsafe and Danish allegedly overloaded him with work just to break him mentally, forced him to wear a skull cap and pray, and then literally posted humiliating photos of it in the official office group chat. Even worse, the reports state Tulsafe made incredibly vile, mocking comments about the man's wife and her medical inability to have children. This really proves the abuse was fundamentally about extreme systemic psychological domination.
Section 5. Corporate System Failure, which leads us to probably the most glaring question of this entire explainer. How on earth did an alleged syndicate operate for years inside a multi-million-dollar corporate facility without anyone noticing?
To figure that out, we have to look at POSH laws, the Prevention of Sexual Harassment. These are mandates for safe reporting mechanisms to protect employees. And the victims did try to speak up. They sent multiple emails and written complaints to the internal committee. But the FIRs allege that the operations manager in charge of the POSH committee, Ashwin Chinani, intentionally buried every single one of those complaints, making sure they never reached the Mumbai head office.
Because he allegedly suppressed those cries for help, the Special Investigation Team, the SIT, didn't just arrest the abusers. They arrested Ashwin Chinani too. This sets an absolutely massive, historic precedent. Compliance officers who actively cover up abuse to protect the company or the abusers will face criminal charges right alongside the perpetrators.
Meanwhile, there's an intense legal battle continuing for another key figure, Nida Khan. And we are looking at two drastically different narratives here. Her defense lawyers argue she's just a 26-year-old, pregnant, low-level telecaller who's being falsely framed. The police, however, allege she was the crucial psychological mastermind, the one who approached broken girls under the guise of friendship to brainwash them into converting to Islam for quote-unquote safety. As of late April 2026, the court strictly rejected her anticipatory bail, and police have launched a massive manhunt for her across multiple cities.
Section 6. National Security Investigation. Let's take a step back for a second, because what started as a horrific workplace harassment case suddenly escalated into something much, much bigger. When the SIT began seizing electronic devices, they uncovered a huge trove of evidence. We're talking over 40 CCTV recordings and 78 highly encrypted chats recovered. But the absolute bombshell, according to investigators, was uncovering a suspected link to Malaysia. Contract employees allege that the syndicate was receiving substantial foreign funding from a radical preacher abroad to carry out these organized conversions. Suddenly, this was no longer just a local crime. The sheer scale of all that digital evidence triggered the immediate entry of India's heavyweights. The National Investigation Agency, the Anti-Terrorism Squad, and the State Intelligence Department all stepped in. The ATS even began deeply interrogating the arrested men for foreign bank passwords. The threat level was deemed so severe that the entire Nashik BPO facility was effectively shut down, with all employees ordered to work from home indefinitely. The gravity of the situation reached the absolute highest levels of state government. Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis stated publicly that they are deeply investigating if this is a larger, organized model of, in his words, corporate jihad. He made it unequivocally clear that if this international nexus is legally proven, the entire network will be uprooted. It perfectly captures just how massive the political and legal magnitude of this case has become.
And that brings us to our final takeaway. We've just mapped out how an alleged syndicate supposedly bypassed every single safeguard a modern corporation has. It really leaves us with a chilling realization. Clearly, having compliance policies written down on paper means absolutely nothing if the people enforcing them are compromised. So, how must our corporate environments actually evolve to truly protect young, vulnerable employees from these hidden dangers? Let that sink in. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the TCS Nashik investigation, and I'll see you on the next explainer.